Hey, here we are with another episode of Realizing Destiny, the podcast. I know she's at it again. She's decided to relaunch this podcast again, right? It's just something that the Lord won't let me shake. And as you can see, I have a new guest. I've had a baby and some other things going on, but we're back. And today we're going to hear from an amazing friend of mine, sister, Miss Laurie Osborne. But before I bring her on, I'm going to pray us in and then we'll jump right in. Corinne wants to say hi first. Say hi, Corinne. Okay. All right. So, dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today and we just say thank you, God. Thank you for waking us up this morning and allowing us to see another day. God, I ask that the words that leave our lips be your words and your words only, God, that the people that are meant to hear this episode, whether today or even a year from now, God, that they find this podcast and that something is reignited in them, God, that they are reminded that you want to hear from them, God, that you want them to know that they can hear from you on their own. So, God, we just give you all the praise, all the glory, and all the honor. All right. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite Miss Laurie Osborne. Hey, girl.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good. Look at Corinne. Like, we here. Okay. This is my show too.
I promise she'd be sound asleep. And then right when I'm about to press live, she'd be like, I'm woke. You were trying to go live without me? What were you thinking? Like, all right. So, Laurie, if you could introduce yourself to the people, let them know who is Laurie Osborne.
Sure. I haven't done that in a really long time. So my name is Laurie Osborne from laurieosborne.com. I am I was a blogger, but I'm a mom of five. I am an entrepreneur. I have my own coaching business. I have a mentorship group that I am getting ready to launch. Whoop. And yeah, when I'm not with the kids, I'm doing all the things. Oh, and I also do website design and graphics and stuff. So the Lord just had me in a bunch of stuff. So, but most importantly, I am also a pusher. I like pushing women from where they are now into who it is and where it is that God is calling them to be. So they get a little tired of that sometimes though, because it's like, why do you keep coming from you? Because I want to see you be great. I want to see you be great and not mediocre. I had to learn it the hard way, so you're gonna have to learn it too.
Yes, I love all that, especially the part about pushing, because we rarely understand the importance of community, motivation, encouragement, pushing, right? Because this journey is not an easy one. So you definitely need those people who will be able to intercede for you, pray for you, and push you, even off of a cliff, as long as you land on your purpose, that is. All right. So, Laurie, talking about purpose, talking about just encouragement and helping people. We're talking today about PFP and your experience with PFP. So, where was Laurie prior to joining PFP? And I know it's been a while. You were like in one of the first classes, but yeah.
Was OG PFP. Whoop whoop. So before I joined PFP, I was a stay-at-home mom. Like I was a military wife, so I kind of just was in a space where I was just going through my day-to-day. Like I was a Christian, yes. I love the Lord, but I wanted more. Right. I knew there was more. I just didn't really know how to tap into it. And then just baby after baby. It was just all the things happening at one time. And then I got to a point where my marriage decided it was like, yep, no, we're not doing this. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what's the fallback? Like, what does that look like? And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, God, like, so I'm not gonna do this without you. I had already been in a space where I wanted to hear God more. Like I was like, God, where are you? And it was in the space, like the transition of separation, where I was just like, okay, I'm not making a move unless you let me know, Lord, what am I gonna do next? Like I haven't worked in almost 10 years. Like, what does that look like for me? Like it was really one of those places in my life where I was just kind of like, what more to it than this? Like I was kind of comfortable aside from, whatever issues that some married people go through. So I was just kind of like, okay, well now what happens? Because this is not what I thought it was going to be. I didn't think that I would be here. So like, what do you want me to do? And to be honest, I didn't really hear anything. And I was like, this ain't the life I want to live. So
yes.
But yeah, I had where was I? I was on Instagram. I see this girl praying, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take a chance. I'm just gonna take a chance. Like I don't really know her, and I was really leery about letting people speak into my life. But I was like, what do I have to lose at this point? So I put in a prayer request, and I remember it was the next day I hopped on because you were like at the end of praying, and I'll never forget what you said. You were like, so I just hear the Lord saying that, if you're going to come to me and talk to me, why do you get up before I start talking? I said, what? I didn't know you were saying nothing to me. I was like, my bad. Like, my bad, Jesus, So that was the start of my whole PFP journey for real.
Wow. And it's so interesting that was the moment that we connected, because that was my journey with him. Like, you got a lot to say. When you gonna be quiet, honey? Like, do you ever stop talking? And look, and you get up all frustrated, like, well, dang, I guess he ain't got nothing to say to me. No, you really didn't let me say anything. You're just talking. Wow. So that's really powerful. And I think you talked about a moment that a lot of people go through, right? Where you have this plan for your life, right? You're talking about from a place of marriage, but it could be in anything. You have a plan for your life career wise, or, that you have children by now, or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden something just shifts and you're like, ooh, where am I going? This doesn't look like anything that I planned for it to be. And I just have to add this. When I met Laurie and Laurie told me she had 5 kids, I was like, girl, you telling the story. First of all, you don't look like you can have even one child, but Laurie has 5 kids. And I was like, girl, better you than me. And then the Lord put me in a position where right now in my home, I have 5 kids. I'm like, oh my God, what did I speak over myself? But I just had to add it in because I always think about that. But okay, so Laurie, if you had to share with us one of your biggest takeaways from PFP, and it doesn't have to be one, it could be a couple, but what is some of the biggest takeaways you took from PFP?
Well, I probably have 2 main ones. So sometimes, we go to the Lord and we ask him for something specific. I know when I transitioned to California, because I'm from the East Coast. So when I moved to California, one of the things that I kept talking to God about, like asking him was, I was like, Lord, I need friends. Like, I want to tribe. Like, where are my people? Like, I really just didn't have it. And I was like, well, God, like, what's going on? And the funny part is I got there in 2013. It wouldn't be till like 2018 to where he actually answered that. Like I had some friends here and there, but as far as community goes, I really was exposed to community through PFP. It was like I just gained a whole bunch of sisters. And I think going to the retreat, like the first retreat, when I got there, I'm like, this is different, Lord. I've never, traveled by myself to another state. Like I'm about to go to this house, people I don't know them. Like it was just such an amazing experience. But I would end up meeting like sisters for life there. And so just that portion, like having community, that was big for me. Like things that I was praying about for like 10 years, it was literally recognized within that weekend. Like as far as ministry goes and stuff like that. I'm like, we in the pool baptizing people, Lord, okay, this is different. I'm like, things that I've watched other people do, like, going through healing and deliverance, like leading and stuff like that. I've never been a part of anything like that. I've been on the outside or like around, but not actually engaging in it. So that was different for me too. And I was just like, wow, God, like you really just came in like boom, just I was like that for me was everything. And just hearing God for myself, because one of the things that I struggled with was being still. Okay. And obviously that was the first thing that he addressed, but still, okay. Like it was being still before him. And I thought I was doing pretty all right. I was going in prayer. I was sitting there. I was just waiting. I wasn't hearing nothing. So I just got up. But I realized like that when I started journal praying though, oh, that hit different. At first I was like, well, what if this don't work? Like, how am I supposed to do it? I used to be an overthinker. Okay. It used to be. And so I was in this position where I would sit to go to journal prayer and I'm like, that don't seem significant. This don't even make sense. This don't even make sense. But one of the first things you learn in PFP is listen, don't overthink it. Okay. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, you write that down and then, take it from there. I mean, as the years have gone on, me journal praying and like doing PFP and stuff, there are other things that the Lord has added, like, ask the Lord about scripture and stuff like that. But I mean, in the very beginning, like we weren't doing all of that. So it's kind of like I was writing it all down and I'm like, okay, God. And then after a while, I realized like, oh, you really talking to me though? You like me for real?
That part.
So it's definitely hearing God. Like that was the biggest thing. It was definitely hearing God. Really stepping into my purpose. Even though my purpose, stepping into it and looked like what I thought, it really didn't. But it was a great experience overall though. Like it wasn't what I expected. And I was like, oh, this is different. So
yes, that part is different. Like you be like, oh, your expectations way different than what I expected over here. Because this thing I would have never. Okay, and just the fact that you even talked about the first retreat and us doing deliverance and things like that. Like I went to a deliverance church for a very long time in my walk with God. So I've seen it. Like you said, I was in the back. I saw it, and he began to prepare me for it like a week before the retreat, like showing me what would happen. But I'm like, who doing all that? Who else gonna be there? Where they at? Because they're not on this list of people who have attended. So who gonna do all this? And then so it just is a reminder of the importance of just obeying, right? Like we don't know who, like I didn't know that those were your prayers to be able to operate in that space and get those revelations and things like that, but he did, right? And so that's why it's just so important to obey, even though some of that stuff don't be making no sense. Okay, it don't got to make sense. The other part, and I love how you talked about the community, because I always think about the very first PFP class where we did not have a community component. We actually just were meeting on Facebook Live, so they never got to meet each other. They just saw each other's name and comments. And that was the feedback from the first session, was to add the community component. And I'm so glad we did, because I just love it. We, like you said, we're like a family and we hold each other accountable and we love on each other, So I really love that piece of it. And then the whole point of PFP is to be able to confidently hear the voice of God. So, hey, you touched on it all. Okay. So if you could have implemented or did anything differently while you were in that class. Now, like you said, time has passed, so things have changed. What would that have been?
I wouldn't have made God complicated. That was something that he kept talking to me about. Stop overcomplicating me. And I used to like overcomplicate it because, again, I used to overthink making a move. So if anything I could have done different is to implement what I heard, what he was telling me to do, like what he was asking of me quickly, without me having to sit there like, well, is this going to work? Are people going to come? Does this make sense? Does this look right? Like a lot of people don't realize when the Lord gives you instruction or he gives you a vision, like move on it. Ask him for clarity, like about the first step, and then move on that first step. And some of us don't do that. We're like, okay, guys, so you're going to give us the next. He's like, no, I'm going to give you this first piece. You move. And then I give you the next one after you do the first thing. Like, and sometimes we don't do that. We just like, I don't see how this is going to work. And God's like, I don't need you to see how it's going to work. I just need your obedience. I need your yes. Like that looks like you following me. It's doing what I'm asking of you, especially if you gave me your yes. Like, so I feel like that was probably one of the biggest things that I could have done differently, is just to move forward like boldly. I do realize, I recognize that I think some people feel like, okay, well, I'm gonna get into it and then things are just gonna start shifting and changing quickly. It can, but that's also, it's like predicated on whether or not are you going to implement quickly? Are you going to sit and listen, and be willing to go through those hard places and then Like, even if you get knocked back, to recover. Sometimes we don't do that. We get knocked down and then it doesn't look like what God said. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, I don't want to do this. Maybe I miss God. This doesn't make sense. And really what the Lord is doing is he's teaching you how to be diligent and obedient, whether or not it looks like what you wanted, and just pushing forward. Like, a lot of people don't understand the press. There is a press in being in God. You have to keep going. Like, he never told you that it was going to be, your life wasn't, giving your life to Christ, hearing him, stuff like that. It wasn't going to be void of problems, trials, and tribulations. Actually, it says that you should rejoice in those things because it builds your character. But some of us we just be laying down and they're like, no, I'm not going to do this. You good? Like, I don't want to do it. It doesn't look like what I thought. Forget it. Like, let's try something else. And obviously, if he told you that to begin with, it's because he knew what was on the other side of it. You may not see what's on the other side of it, but just taking those first steps and then being able to say, okay, I did the first things, now what? And just so I'm clear, I've done a lot of first things that God has told me to do. And then I was like, this don't look like what I thought it was. Like, I thought it would have, took off. I thought it would have looked different. And I think that also has to do with those expectations. Some of us add our expectations to what God is saying, or adding our plan to what God says. And God is like, I never told you that. Like, I told you this. I didn't open up the rest of it. You assumed that it was for this. It wasn't for that. It was your job to now come back to me like, hey, well, I did this and I'm doing it. Now what? What does that look like to you? And some of us don't do that. We just be like, all right, God, you told me this. I did it. It ain't happening. Forget it. I don't know what this is. I'm gonna do something else. Just give me something. Give me something else. God is like, no, I need you to master being diligent and consistent in those things first. Like, it might not make sense to you. Just keep doing it anyway. Like, do it anyway. Come to me. Ask me. What do you want me to do now? What does that look like now? Like, all the things.
That part. And I think we actually talked about that last night on live prayer. And I was in a session, we get an instruction from God, but we put our own goal and, like you said, expectation to it. And then what happens is usually that little child in us feels rejected or like we misheard him. And then we begin to try to figure it out ourselves. So the example the young lady used was God told her to exercise every day. And so she immediately assumed that meant she was going to be losing weight and snatched. Okay, that's what she said. That's what goes with working out, right? And drinking water every day. And so she was doing it consistently. I think she said for about a month, and she wasn't really losing weight. And so she felt like, God, did I hear you right? Number one, and am I doing it right? I must be doing something wrong. And the Lord instructed me to tell her to go before him and ask him what his goal for her working out every day was. And he was like, I didn't say you would lose weight. My goal for pushing you to work out every day was showing you that you're more disciplined and consistent than you really think you can be. Right. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, and so I'm glad that you touched on that, because what we have to learn is, as we're walking with Christ, the journey really is about retraining us and renewing our mind and showing us that the way we thought, the way we operated wasn't really necessarily in alignment with his will and his way for our lives. And so as you're going down that journey, he's stripping you away from those things that really don't align with him, and his calling for your life. So it gets tough though, especially if you're like, okay, God, I'm showing up and this is not looking like what I expected it to look like. But what I found is, like you kind of said about your original prayer, you prayed that years ago. Sometimes it takes a while for it to actually come to pass. And we just don't have patience sometimes. So that was really, really good. So if you could you share with everyone, where are you now with successfully completing PFP, with being out of PFP for a little while, coming on some retreats? Where is Laurie, and how are you living in purpose today?
So if I'm honest, I'm in all the places. I'm just like, God, what are we doing? Like, you ever see that meme, look like the roller coaster? You just be like, that's where I'm at. That is exactly where I'm at. I'm like, Lord, just, the Lord was telling me for this particular season, because it's back to school time, and He was like, your plate is going to be really full, like your schedule is going to be full. And I'm like, okay, God, didn't really know what He meant by that. Okay, and out of nowhere, it was just kind of like the things that initially I was just doing for myself, I was just doing for my own business. He was like, okay, well, I want you to do that for other people as far as like web design goes. Because remember, I hadn't worked in almost 10 years when I first started PFP. And then I would get maybe like 2 more jobs. Was it 2? 3. I would get 3 more jobs in those other years. So between 2018 and now in 2023, I've had 3 jobs in between there. Baby, these jobs did not last. I'm talking about one of them was a month, and the Lord was like, no. And then the next one was probably like, I don't know, a week or 2. It was 2 weeks, and then the next one was a week. And each one, God was like, I never told you to get a job. Or he said something like, what was the last one? He was just like, you wanted a king, but you already have a king. I was just like, all right, you just gonna come for me. And that last one, he was just like, yep, you saw my flex. Okay. It was never that you couldn't get the job, but that's not where I want you to be. So go ahead and resign. I said, oh, I actually really wanted this one. Like, it was an assistant director position at a daycare. And I was like, I really wanted the job. And God was like, no. And so he kind of has me in this place where it's just like, I've given you the businesses and I want you to steward them well. And I think sometimes we think like, okay, we're going to just say, okay, God, we're going to give you a yes and we're going to do it. And we think that all the things that come with it are going to be easy or at least make sense. And to be honest, a lot of times they don't make sense and they push you and they stretch you. And just, I got 5 kids. So I'm already stretched there, right? And then it's like, okay, the Lord's like, well, I need you to go forward in ministry and I need you to go forward in business. So right now, I have my design business, which I would have never thought. I used to say I wasn't a creative. Like, I really just didn't feel like I was creative. I was functional, not fancy. And the Lord was like, yep, I'm going to show you. And then so I ended up, doing websites for people, flyers, book covers. And so I have like the design business. I have a cleaning company, which, if I'm honest, that's probably where I'm being stretched the most. And so I'm in the process of like launching now, and then I just have my own brand, which is basically my books. And I'm about to launch a mentorship, like a coaching mentorship, and that's going to be a stretch, but that's like my heart right there. Like, that's what I really want to do. And trust me, God will have you do a bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily want to do in order for you to get to the thing that you actually want to do, because it's preparing you. It's not a punishment. It might look a little weird, but it all has to do with trust and faith leading up to that particular space. So right now, I'm in a position where I'm able to shift my mind concerning like what it is that I feel like my heart is not into. Because people talk about passion, but they don't realize like, okay, you can have passion, but discipline is what you really need if you're going to grow a business. Because some days you're not going to feel motivated. You're not going to feel passionate about what you're doing. You don't want to walk away. And you need to be able to say, okay,
but if you're going to want to run away, you're going to want to run away. Okay.
Like, you got to be able to say, like, I'm not feeling it today, but because I gave you my yes, I'm going to show up. So in all the other areas, I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it with excellence. Like, and in the places where I struggle, I'm going to bring that to you. Like, okay, well, I'm struggling here. What's going on the inside? Like, and he's literally been walking alongside of me there. Ministry has been a whole other thing. It's like, yep, I want you here. I want you to do this. I need you serving here. I want you to join that. And I'm like, I just want to take a nap. I want a nap. I want a nap. And God is like, you sleep later. I'm like, okay. So he has my hands in different things. And I'm grateful though, because a few years ago, I would never have seen myself in a place of coaching other women or, doing a cleaning business or even designing. Like, I would never have seen myself do any of those things. And now I hear myself talking to people like, like, oh yeah, you just need to do this, that, and there. And they're just looking at me like, you lost me. And I'm like, oh, like you really did build this up in me. So it's a stretch, but I'm here.
Yeah, she said, but I'm here. And you touched on so much in regards to like number one, and never looking like what you expected it to, right? But trusting the process. And also the part about like God, when God takes you into that place of passion and purpose, He wants it to be done well and stewarded well. And He needs to make sure you know or have those certain tools and um, business fundamentals of how to do it, right? So, like you said, I didn't think I would be doing design and cleaning, but what I love about God is when I started my business, I knew from corporate how to do certain things, right? So, like you said, for your business, you'll know how to do a website, do those things, right? And it makes that more seamless when you get in that space so that you can really focus on your area of genius. And I think sometimes we want to rush that processing part because we're like, I'm at this job that I don't want to be at. I got, I'm like, because it's an uncomfortable space, but it really is important that you really see what he's doing in that space so that you don't squander it, so that you don't miss the jewels and all that he's giving you. So that is really, 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 really good. So Laurie, if you were to leave the people with just a word of encouragement, just something that they need to get them to their next, what would you give them?
Don't rush the process. Like, don't try to jump, hop, skip steps. Like, don't do it, because what's gonna happen is you're gonna end up having to spin the block again and run it back, and that's not what you want to do. You don't
spin that block.
Listen, you don't want to do that, and because a lot of people feel like, oh, I could just skip this. Like, I know this. Like, do not go into this assuming that you know this, that it looks like what it looked like in past seasons. This is, especially when the Lord elevates you, it's a new season, it's a new stretch, it's a new demand. You really want to take a step back and be like, okay, so what am I learning in this season? Because sometimes we're in seasons and we're just like, I don't even get why I'm going through this. Like, this makes no sense. And sometimes we don't ask the questions like, what am I supposed to be learning, God? Because maybe, just maybe, I'm supposed to be learning something. Like, what are you trying to teach me here? Especially with, people on jobs. And they're like, oh God, I don't want to deal with these people. They don't know what they talk about, and they're just complaining. And it's just like, God is just sitting there like, are you done? Are you finished? And they're like, well, I don't understand why you won't just let me leave. And really hone in on what he's saying to you in those quiet moments. So if he's talking to you about your attitude, the posture of your heart, what if you had to work this job for 20 years? Would I just be enough for you? Because I have a friend where the Lord asked her that, and she's like, God, you are enough for me. If I worked the same job and I never was able to just launch into entrepreneurship, then I'm good with just being on this job. I'm like, sometimes the Lord is really looking at the posture of your heart. He's really looking at, like, how are you going to respond in these spaces? Like, how do you deal with my people? Like, anybody who's called to people, period, called to serve, he's looking at how do you manage your friendships? Okay, how do you manage those friendships? How do you manage your family? Like, how do you manage other people's stuff while you're on these jobs? How are you managing their stuff? Like, how are you doing that? Don't just assume that you're gonna get into your business and, oh, in my business, I'm gonna do this, that, and the third. Like, no, because if you're not doing it over here, then you're not gonna do it over there. Like, you're not gonna do it over there. Let's just be honest, because it's not about like a location thing. Like, this is a character thing at that point. Like, this is about you as a person. How would you manage these people? God said, hey, I want you to step out in ministry. Well, baby, if you was cussing out Susie and everybody else on this job, you think you're gonna be able to deal with God's people? I'm just saying, like, you're not gonna be able to handle it. You're gonna be like, am I not a person? You think you about to come for me? No, you gotta be able to, okay, like, so let's start there. Like, you have to remember, you're not dealing with the person, you're dealing with the spirit that's in operation. Like, all these things come up, and maybe you will miss it if you try to rush through the process and the processing. Trust me, I've been there where God literally, it was a test I wanted to take, and I just knew, I was like, well, I didn't know if I was gonna pass, but I knew for sure the first part of the test I was gonna pass. I was gonna pass, and it was hand washing. right? It's like a CNA course. I didn't even know what I needed it for, but I was going to take it. And maybe I went to do this thing, and the Lord said, because you have to wash your hands for, I think, like 20 seconds or something like that. I'm washing my hands, and I could hear the Lord say, Laurie, slow down. You're going too fast. And I'm like, okay. And I slowed down and stuff. But by the time I got my results, the stuff that I wasn't sure I was going to pass on the test, because there's 5 parts to it. Pass the 4 questions, the 4 parts. I failed the first one. You fail the first one, you fail the whole thing. And I was like, are you serious? I was so upset. Like, God, really? And I just remember him saying it, because I was like, God, I don't understand. I remember him saying to me, Laurie, don't rush the process. Do not rush the process. Like, you assume, like, okay, this is going to be easy. It wasn't about being easy. It was literally about hitting all the major steps, learning what you needed to learn, and doing those things in that order. So that way you didn't miss out on the lesson. And I was just like, oh. I mean, I'm not going to pay for this class again. I mean, I guess. If you wanted me to learn that, then I got it, Jesus. Okay, but I'm not paying for this class again. Don't nobody have no time. I did, however, come into a space where I really realized why I was there. Like, I thought I was there to get this certification to move on into the next space. No, there was actually a girl in my class who wasn't even a part of our original class. She came late. And it was like a couple of weeks after I took my test, she ends up calling me and reaching out to me like, hey, do you remember me? And I'm like, yeah. And so she was like, I just don't know what to do about X, Y, and Z. I ended up being able to encourage her and then like walk her through how to like take the test and stuff like that, just praying for her, all of that. And she ended up taking her test and passed. I was like, oh, okay, God, like you really you wanted me here for this particular reason, like, because I was really sitting there like, there's some reason I'm here. It can't just be this, because I don't even want to do this. I don't even want to do this. But I ended up ministering to a lot of the ladies in my class, which I thought was like, oh, okay. I mean, it cost me a couple $100, but just you go where God wants you to be. Just, it's okay. It's all right.
But I think that's so powerful, because even though it cost you a couple of $100, it just strengthened you in that ministry capacity. Because I think sometimes we look at ministry in one way, right? Like, it has to be in the church, or it has to be done this way. And he reminded you in that space that no, even where I'm calling you to, right? You can do it there. Like, I'll connect you with people. So that's really, really good. All right. So Laurie, tell the people how they can find you. Of course, everything will be in the show notes of how to reach Laurie. But Laurie, how can they find you? What do you have coming up? I know you talked about the mentorship, so let them know all of those good things.
So you can find me on laurieosborne.com. My whole website. You can find me on IG. I always get my IG wrong. It's at _ Laurie Osborne, all one word. And the same name on Facebook is Laurie Osborne. Like, you could find me there. You want to see where I stay at? I'm there. No, joking. But as far as the mentorship goes, I actually don't have a date for the mentorship just yet, because I'm understanding there's a couple ways that God can like move you into certain spaces. And for some people, they learn in certain spaces, but they also have mastered certain levels. And for me, one of the things that the Lord was really impressing on me was, in order for you to manage that next season, you need to have a different level of pour. So he has me like a part of a mentorship right now. And I'm dealing with all the little quirks leading up to, putting the mentorship together. But he already gave me the framework for it and everything else like that. So I'm really in a space where I'm like, okay, God, it's go time. Like, I have all the framework, the pricing, all the things. I just want to make sure that when I get into the space, I don't mismanage the space. Like, even though it might be where my heart is, burnout is real. And don't nobody got time. Okay. I'm not trying to burn out. These kids already be trying to have me burn out. Like, I don't need to burn out there. Especially dealing with moms who have children and stuff like that. Baby, everybody can't be melting down. So so just be on the lookout for that. join my email list. If you go to the link in my bio on IG, you can join my email list. There is a declaration page on there. So there are a lot of moms who, maybe you don't necessarily know how to pray strategically for your kids, or you don't know where to start, right? So I have like a declaration printout on there, but it also puts you into my email list. So that way, when I do launch, you don't miss anything. So you can kind of go over there. You can find me there.
Yes, and I'm glad you touched on the part about like not burning out and creating a system ahead of time to not burn out. I would just add that sometimes you learn the best system once you just jump out there and the clients come and they navigate that for you too. But yeah, definitely follow Laurie. Laurie is very wise. I call Laurie my Bible teacher. She's very, very wise. She has a lot to offer, not just from being a mom of 5, but just from ministry, just from marriage, just from a lot of different places. Yeah, Corinne even said, "Look, listen, the baby knows, right? So guys, I thank you so much, Laurie. I thank you so much for your time and sharing with us today, and for the audience, thank you so much for listening in and tuning in. Until next time."